Today, we have a wonderful program sketched out for you. A talk on inspirational leadership by Professor Mahadevan from IIM Bangalore. And then we'll have a video lecture by Andre Vaz on why Sankara enjoys a significant role today. He is speaking from Australia on a video format. So let us start with a prayer and then we'll go to the next step. Om Vatavitapi Samipe Bhumi Bhage Nishannam Sakala Muni Jananam Gnana Dataramarat Chitram Vatataron Mule Vriddha Sishya Gurur Yuva Gurostur Mauna Vyakhyanam Sishyastu Chinna Samsayaha Om Nama Pranavartaya Suddha Gnanaika Murtaye Nirmalaya Prasantaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. We welcome Dr. B. Mahadevan, a professor in Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, and he specializes in production and operations management. More than that, his unique contribution has been integrating the Vedantic wisdom, integrating the various elements of Hindu wisdom with management. He has published several papers on yoga, he gives regular lectures on Bhagavad Gita, and he was the first, what you might call a founding vice chancellor of Chinmaya Vidyapita from 2016 to 2018. And he was also a chief editor of IIMB Management Review. And he has worked, in addition to IIM Bangalore, also in IIT Delhi as well as XLRI. We are really privileged to have Professor Mahadevan join us today. Professor Mahadevan, very welcome here. And we are looking forward to your talk on inspirational leadership. So the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Prasad ji. Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity. I consider it as a blessing, more than a privilege, to take some time and share my thoughts on, this whole topic looks, at the outset, it may look a little strange. We are saying leadership, inspirational leadership and Advaita Vedanta. But not surprisingly, the vastness of the scope of Advaita Siddhanta is such that perhaps we can even draw some lessons for leadership. Although it's a darshana, it is a very Vedantic sort of a treatise that we have, because Shankaracharya is an Avatara Purusha, so everything that he says should make relevance to us in all walks of life. Okay, so what I propose to do in the next perhaps 20-25 minutes is to very quickly, to begin with, go through some issues that we face, or some kind of a stock taking of leadership as we practice, as the research sort of also gives us some sense, and identify, are there some areas which requires some filling up in order to make this leadership even more effective, because this has been one subject matter of interest to management practitioners and researchers for quite some time. Every now and then we hear some leadership crisis. We find that the moral fabric of an organization so critically depends on leadership and so on. Although so many theories have come in the last 30 years, still I think the search is on. It merely points to the fact that there are areas which needs to be addressed even more. Anyway, very quickly, if you look at leadership from a practice perspective, there are 3-4 keywords come to my mind. The first thing is leadership is all about responsibility and ownership. Well, it's a responsibility to take decisions, freedom to execute things, if you want to look at it that way. Quite often the leader thinks it is my response. The my is very important. It is my responsibility to get the performance right for the organization, get the task done, monitor the subordinates. So many things are there, you know. This is one keyword comes to my mind when you talk of leadership practice. The second way to look at leadership, perhaps, is it is a possibility to enjoy position, power, and endowment of resources. It's a matter of position. It's a matter of endowment of resources at one's disposal. Therefore, as a leader, I have the authority to approve, to give resources, to permit things to happen in an organization. You know, one can look at it that way. So these are two dominant dimensions that come to my mind when you talk of leadership practice. If you step a little bit into theory and also see what has practice imbibed and picked up from theory in a big way, two more keywords come to my mind. One keyword is what I call it as leader follower. You know, there is this feeling that here is a leader and perhaps he or she is going to lead us, so therefore we follow. So this leader follower model is a very important thing. The other paradigm of leadership, which we have borrowed from the theory, because these constructs came from the theory, is what I call it as cost benefit. You know, leadership at the end of the day, to a large extent, is all about some complex calculations of cost and benefit. While it happens at an institutional level, invariably it happens at an individual level also. What I call it as what is in it for me. Not in a very derogatory sense, but you know, I think at an individual level also this cost benefit sort of plays out. So these are some of the defining paradigms of leadership that is being practiced. And also there are many other things, you know, several years back, people said charisma and strong personality is a great asset of leadership. But now people are saying we are not sure whether charisma and strong personality is good about leadership or not. And several years back, we had what is called this theory X, an I-centric style of leadership. So, you know, the whole thing is being challenged, being looked at differently and so on. But the fact remains that to a large extent, leadership seems to be a little more focused on transactional and task orientation. Yeah. Well, that's how it has sort of shaped leadership. That's fine. Of course, the theory has always moved ahead of the practice, which is what it ought to be. So in my last count, I found some 28 new theories of leadership. So just to name a few, you know, I think some of the recent ones, authentic leadership, for example, spiritual leadership, servant leadership, somebody sometime back said level 5 leadership, and so on and so forth. It merely points to that the theory is taking us in a particular way. The practice is sort of catching up with the theory. And while this keeps happening, there is an interesting trend which I noticed in the last 10 years when we talk about all these leadership, you know, theory and practice. Increasingly, people are talking about what is called inner development, so-called inner development. You know, some of the leadership theories finally sort of comes to say there is a need for inner development. And if you look at authenticity, authenticity is not something outside. Authenticity is the quintessential nature of oneness. So therefore, all arguments on authenticity also should take us inside. You know, I'm reminded of a very nice quotation from Kathopanishad. It says, Avrita chakshuhu amrtatvam aikshat. You know, that's what it is. You know, turning inside has been a major conversation in our Eastern texts, particularly the Indian Vedantic texts and so on. So increasingly we are saying, can we talk about what is this inner development, what is this authenticity and so on. The other strain of discussion that I see is there a room beyond cost and benefit in delivering superior leadership? Or is it still dominantly driven by the cost benefit and the risk, paradigms that which have shaped, of course, the management thinking quite a bit, rationality and risk, all that things. But I think increasingly there is a question, is there something beyond cost and benefit in delivering superior leadership? Is there a world beyond what is in it for me, truly in the practice of leadership? What I mean to say is, what about compassion? What about oneness? Do they play a role, or are they theoretical constructs as it seems to largely exist? Or we need to think about it even more? So I think these kinds of questions are being raised. But at the end of all that, there is something which personally bothers me. I think that also needs some way of addressing, and that is, according to me, the bane of great leadership that we practice today has two sides of a coin. One side is one becomes a great leader for an organization,
right.
And the other side is he becomes a big disaster in his personal life.
Right.
Self-evaluation, he will not even, pass. I mean, it seems to be a sort of it's a reality, and it seems to be a contradiction. That while from an organization perspective, you seem to have delivered, but from a personal perspective, you seem to have failed.
Right.
Now, this bothers me. I don't think the leadership is complete if these issues are not addressed. Therefore, given these kinds of fault lines that we see in however progress that you have made in the name of leadership, the question is, do we have answers for this? And is there a way we can address some of these issues?
Yeah.
Now, very quickly, let me bring in Advaita Siddhanta. Now, the centerpiece of Advaita Siddhanta is Jiva Brahma Aikyam, the oneness, right? Now, this is, this is as easy a construct as one can write it in a piece of paper. In order to understand it, you need multiple constructs. Otherwise, we cannot make sense of it. So there are many, we can go hours into it. Adi Shankaracharya has done it, but I'll pick up 5, 6 very quickly to sort of connect the dots. Now, if you have to understand this Jiva Brahma Aikyam, the first thing that we need to understand is Jiva Jagat Ishvara Sambandha. This is a triangle. There is a Jiva, there is, which is each one of us as a unit of individual. There is a Jagat. Jagat is an environment in which we are operating. And there is an Ishvara. Ishvara is a larger force. Different religions may call it with different names and so on. It can be a Nirguna Brahman also. So how do we connect these three triangles? That is one construct required to understand this Advaita Siddhanta. Once you get into it, very quickly we'll get into what is called the second construct, Nitya Anitya Vastu Vichara. What is perishable and what is non-perishable? What is permanent and what is not permanent? Because unless you bring that construct, we may not be able to understand this. And if you travel in that construct, it takes us to the third construct, which I call it as Trigunatmika Maya. This perishable thing is all articulated through this whole concept of Maya. So Kshetra and Kshetrajna, as in Bhagavad Gita, Shankaracharya in his Chatusutri also talks about. What is this Kshetra and Kshetrajna? All these will come into play. And if you dwell deeper into it, then it brings the next construct of Jnanam and Karma. What is this Jnanam and what is this Karma? There is Jnana Karma Samuchaya, there are some deeper concepts and so on. And once we travel into that construct, the next construct that we need is Vyavaharika and Paramarthika Satya. There is a world, empirical world, and there is a philosophical world. And that is why a great leader can be a personal disaster if you don't understand these two realities of life. So we need to, play on both these. And so therefore, finally, it will lead us to what is called Pravritti Dharma and Nivritti Dharma. There is a Dharma of being part of this world, and there is a certain Dharma or a codified set of rules for self-evolution. So unless all these are weaved together, I don't find that last bit of leadership being constructed into a wholesome piece. So I'm not getting into any of these constructs, but I very wanted to quickly give some important things which will, so I'm going to take 2, 3 of these constructs and try to see if it can give us some directions in our journey in leadership. So let me start with this fundamental construct. Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya, Jivo Brahmaiva Naparaha. This central tenet of Advaita Siddhanta. Now this oneness, it has its own journey and it has its own methodology. You know, I am just actually doing a series on Sadhana Panchaka where we are talking about all these in some great detail. But anyway, once we go through this particular construct, if you ask what will it do to a leader, I think what it will bring is a very important concept called interconnectedness. The oneness will bring from a leadership perspective, it will bring the relational dimension of spirituality called interconnectedness, a sense of unification with others that one experiences. Now, how does it transform? It brings a certain level of awareness of the needs of others, which is very important. A desire for justice for others. These are the finer aspects of leadership that we need to sort of bring it in. So if somebody truly takes it and practices it, imbibes it, lives through it a little bit, then to me, two things will happen to a leader. First thing that will happen is such a leader will bring in a great deal of compassion and empathy. This will be richly harvested because this brings that icing on the cake of the leadership. It's extremely important that a leader is very compassionate. He has a lot of empathy. So this oneness will bring it. The second thing that this axis of interconnectedness will bring to leadership is what I call it as mutual dependence. Leadership drives to its excellence only when we have, mutual dependence. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Parasparam bhavayantaha shreyaha param avapsyata. The sense of mutual dependence is extremely important with boss and the subordinate. Even with nature, we are going through some of the issues right away because we have lost out the little bit of connection of this mutual dependence and so on. So this is a very important construct that will come out of this Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. Now, if you just move on, let me take this Nitya Anitya Vastu Vichara. This is a very powerful construct that we need. It's extremely important for a leader because a leader confronts a great deal of situations. Some of them are very emotional. Some of them are sort of very, I would say, risky. You can put all dimensions possible that a leader faces. Now, what does this Nitya Anitya Vastu Vichara will do? In fact, our Eastern tradition, our Vedanta literature, in fact, Shankaracharya, enormous discussion on what is Nitya and what is Anitya, because he calls it as Nitya Anitya Vastu Vichara is called Viveka. That develop that sense of discrimination that we have. Now, if you ask me, if somebody really travels on this dimension, what would be the first change that will happen to the person? The first thing that will happen is this person will transform from a fear of death to an awareness of limitation of mortality. These are two different principles. Fear of death is one. To be aware of the limitations of mortality is another. And this is a huge transformation for leadership because many decisions that we take somewhere implicitly is guided by this Semitic principle of single life. So the fearness of death is a huge psychological, thing that's happening at the back of our mind. So this Nitya Anitya Vastu Vichara will actually tear it down. And if you ask what would be a leadership implication, I think it will greatly facilitate what I call it as detached attachment. People will become a little more detached, even while they are attached with many things. Decisions can become a little more easier. One can breed fearlessness as they face the world. The risk aversion would be beautifully sort of handled with Nitya Anitya Vastu Vichara. That's why, in Yajnavalkya says in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, after a long discussion with Janaka, he says, Abhayam vai prapto si Janaka. You have truly become fearless now because this sense of discrimination is required. To a leader, it will provide amazing capacity to handle nonsense in life, ups and downs of life. And delegation of roles and responsibilities will become much more effective, much more easier. I can go on, but I will sort of stop here and move on to the next construct, which comes through what is called Adhyasa Bhashya. Adi Shankaracharya started his Chatussutri with a beautiful preamble. which said, Yushmad Asmat Pratyaya Gocharayoho, Vishaya Vishayinoho, Tamaprakashavat, Viruddha Subhavayoho, Itaretara Bhavanupattau, Siddhayam Taddharmanam api, Sutaram, Itaretara Bhavanupatti, Upapattihi iti, Ataha, like that it goes. In fact, if people understand this Chatussutri, even this Adhyasya Bhashya alone, it has been my personal experience, two things will happen. This is the greatest lesson for what I call it as personal psychology. I don't call it as individual psychology. Personal psychology, one's own. Who am I? What is this notion of Kshetra and Kshetrajna? What is this Mithya and Satya in one's life? These are very important principles, not for Vedanta. These are very important for us to, handle situations in life, to develop that fearlessness. So I think a good understanding of this Adhyasya Bhashya, in my opinion, will play a huge role in build authenticity in a very unambiguous fashion. So all these authentic leadership that we are talking about requires a good understanding of this Yushmad and Asmat Pratyaya Gochara, what it really means, how do we handle, what is this life, what is people, who am I, what do I mean when I say I do something. It's a deep psychology that I see here. It will help us develop these personal traits of fearlessness and so on. Then I'll go to a beautiful construct. Shankaracharya in his opening session, in his preamble, Ubodghata for Bhagavad Gita, started with this sentence. He said, Dvivido hi vedokto dharma, pravritti lakshano nivritti lakshanascha jagataha sthiti karanam praninam sakshat abhyudaya nishreyasa hetu. He beautifully brings this concept of pravritti dharma and nivritti dharma. This is the biggest piece missing today. We are so much on pravritti dharma. Pravritti dharma is all about material comfort, playing out in the outside world, material security. All those are very important. Shankaracharya never said no. But what he says is you need nivritti lakshana also. And what do you mean by nivritti lakshana? It is inward contemplation, that peaceful sleep that we can get every day after so many things that we do in our office place and in our life and in social life and personal life and so on. So he says these two dharmas are to be balanced. These two dharmas are to be carried along with us. Now, I think this is again a deep idea to be contemplated. If we can combine social welfare with spiritual freedom, that leadership is truly inspirational. Our Bhagavad Gita calls it as Raja Rishi. Rajanamsa asosya Rishischa. One who has the power and one who has the heart to do good for Loka Sangraha. So that will come when you balance pravritti and nivritti dharma. This gives a great possibility to outgrow from what is in it for me. This is the leadership implication that I see here. So these two pairs of dharmas which Shankaracharya talked about in Bhagavad Gita preamble is a great construct. It will develop what is called titiksha. One can handle the dualities of life. One can handle the ups and downs of life. And I think these are some of the principles for inner development. The current literature is saying, let's do inner development. In fact, what I find in the current literature in leadership is it has so beautifully listed what needs to be done. It doesn't say how one can imbibe that. So that how part of it we can draw from our Vedantic literature. I think the how part of it can be drawn very nicely from Advaita Siddhanta. Now, if you are not convinced of any of these reasons as to why we should read Shankaracharya, I'll give one final reason why we should read Advaita Siddhanta and Shankaracharya's works. The first benefit that we will get when we read Shankara's work, his Bhashya, we hear it from a guru and then we contemplate on it, is it builds phenomenal clarity of thought, which is a very important requirement for a leader. The clarity of thought that one can get by reading Shankara's work is unparalleled. I will give you one example by quoting his shortest work called Ekashloki. Look at the clarity of thought here. One elderly gentleman came and asked him, who am I? Where is the source of, who am I? So see how Shankaracharya resolved it for him. Kim Jyotistava, what is your source of light? This is what Shankaracharya asked. Then the old man said, Bhanuman Ahani, me. To me, the daytime, the source of light is sun. Ratrau, Acharya asks, Ratrau, then he says, Pradipadikam. No, in the night you have the stars and all those, moon and all that. Syat evam. Okay, let it be so. Ravi Deepa Darshana Vidau. If there is no an Amavasya day in the night, you neither have the moon nor have the sun. What do? Ravi Deepa Darshana Vidau. Kim Jyotihi Akhyahime. Please tell me, what is the source of light? Then this gentleman says, Chakshuhu. Then Shankaracharya says, okay. Tasya Niminiladi Samaye. When you close your eyes, where is the source of light? There's the next question he asks. Kim Jyotihi. He says, Dihi. It's my buddhi. It's my intellect. Then Shankaracharya asks, Diyoho Darshane. How do you see intellect? You need light to see anything. How do you see intellect? Diyoho Darshane Kim. Then this gentleman said, Tatra aham atho bhavan paramakam jyotihi tatasmi prabho. So he finally answered himself. So let me read this shloka quickly. Kim jyotistava bhanuman ahanime ratrau pradipadikam syadevam ravideepa darshana vidau kim jyotihi akhyahime chakshustasya Kim tatra hamato bhavan paramakam jyotis tadasmi prabho. Look at the clarity of argument, the order in which the issue is, communicated. Minimum we can imbibe these qualities from Shankaracharya's work. I think with this, I must close it down. It's about 28 minutes. I think I must stick to this time frame. Thank you very much for this opportunity. It's a great blessing for me to try out my Alpa Buddhi a little bit to see whether we can connect Advaita Siddhanta and leadership. I think the exercise is for you to find out whether it makes sense or not. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mahadevanji. I really like the way in which you laid out how the management philosophy, how the leadership philosophy is grounded in here and now, not in Paramartham, not in anything else bigger. And then you also laid out very nicely the whole idea of transactional nature of leadership. We don't focus on the transformation of either self or organization or others, but we are only interested in cost-benefit analysis, as you called it. And then what I like about is the way in which you laid out simple principles, whether it is the Jiva Brahma Vadam, the whole idea of Jiva Brahma, the idea of interconnectedness, or you talk about of course, we didn't get to the Trigunatmika Maya or Kshetra Kshetrajna Vibhaga, but at the same time, what you laid out in terms of Pravrutti, Nivrutti, or in terms of looking at the benefit of looking at Advaita as something that leaders can learn so that they can be inspired for their own inner development. That way, their behavior can be inspirational for other people who are looking at leaders as the role models. I think you have laid out very, very well. And one question I had before we go into some more questions which other people have got is that you talk about Nitya Nitya Vastu Vichara. That is where obviously the Viveka comes in. You talk about the awareness of limitation of mortality from the fear of death that we have, the whole idea of abhaya or the detached engagement that comes in. How does that occur in your opinion? How do you really make that happen in a leader?
Prasadji, I think moment we tread into this idea of Nitya Nitya Vastu Vichara, initially it is a constant. It's an interesting piece of idea. Now, if somebody sort of gets into it a little deeper, then invariably what will sort of take over is the notion of Punarjanma. See, this is fundamental to our Sanatana Dharma. Moment you bring this karma, that if I have to take a simple example, it's like a profit and loss account and a balance sheet. It's accounting 101 idea basically. So if I just focus only on 1 year operation, then what really happens is, I do not know what is going to happen to the next year. The continuity is not there. Moment that concept takes over me, then the decisions that I make, that the way I look at reality that emerges in front of me, the sense of anxiety dramatically drops. It's not that you have a one chance. I very jokingly quite often say, even if you go to a village, small little festival there is one fellow sitting there with 3 rings for 10 rupees. You can try 3 times to, take a soap which he has put on the other side. For a soap, if you get 3 times, for perfecting yourself, you should get 1,000,000 chances. Right. It's a very simple logical idea. So if you are sort of so as we bring more and more of these ideas, the conviction starts building. Moment the conviction starts building, the sense of that anxiety and the attachment slowly sort of recedes to the background. That improves actually the quality of decision making. That's what happens, I think, to a leader.
That's wonderful. So in practical terms, in the Western world, how I would look at it is, instead of looking at the tactics today, oh, so many people have lost jobs because of this COVID, everybody is staying home, how do I deal with this quarterly numbers? How do I, declare all the results that I need to declare in, soon for this quarter and for this year? So then my stock value will go down. My what you call compensation is connected with how the stock does. So that means my income will reduce. So all of these create a large amount of fear. So then immediately I'll start laying off people. I'll cut out various things, or I'll try to turn something into a cash. So in doing so, we kill our own future possibility.
And we kill ourselves. There's a lot of stress I go through also in the process.
Yeah. Right. So instead of that, what you are saying is, if I understand it correctly, if I can think about what is Nitya, what is Anitya. Anitya is the one that keeps changing, and that is, ephemeral, and it continues to move. But I have to have trust in my people. I have to have trust in my company, and I need to trust that they will come back, and they also know that we have lost a lot of money and company has been, paying our salary. If we can work together and inspire and work towards a higher goal, like as you said, parasparam bhavayantaha, if there is a way in which employees and myself can work together in an inspired way, then we might be able to make more profits with more efficiency, because we have come up with creative ways. So then we can get out of it, right?
Absolutely.
So that means focus on something which is relationship oriented, which is connected with your first principle. Then we might be able to do some wonderful things by applying this philosophy and becoming fearless. Is that properly, am I understanding you?
Absolutely, Pradeep. Saji, I'll tell you one more thing. I ask this question quite often. If I lost my job and if I have 4 children, which children I throw out of my house?
Exactly.
We don't. We say we'll cut breakfast, we'll manage with 2 food and try 6 months. After 6 months, I don't get a job. We all will together and say we'll eat once. After some time, we'll say we'll eat once in 2 days. That's what is happening in this country, because there is this basic framework is deeply ingrained in us. We should bring that.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And let me take a couple of questions. One gentleman, Ram Mohan, he says, can Advaita philosophy be simplified and set in form of small proposals like this to a commoner, which will enable him to live better? I think that's what you have done, but can you elaborate?
No, absolutely. Shankaracharya has done it adequately. You take Bhajagovindam. There are very small, beautiful pieces that he has done. We can take Bhajagovindam. That is enough.
Yeah.
It will give us steps and steps of life, which has sort of extracted Advaita Siddhanta so beautifully in some nice workable things. You have Prashnottara, Ratnamalika, and that Shankaracharya himself has done. I think it is possible to sort of elaborate on some of them, definitely.
Some of the principles. And one more question, which actually comes from the co-creator of this festival, Ravi Shankar, because he is the CEO of Mentor Cloud. His passion is quite a bit about how to mentor people in the most effective way. He says the Ekashloki, which you just talked about, he says the great mentor-mentee interaction is kind of explored where the mentor's thoughtful questions bring out the genius in the mentee. So he says, thank you, Professor Mahadevan. And I would like to add to that by saying, can you say a little bit more about how he mentored, as a leader, as an inspirational leader, you need to mentor people. A leader has to develop his followers. Can you elaborate a little bit more on anything more from Advaita or from Sankara that might be useful for mentoring people?
Well, not in a very direct sense, but I think the first issue that comes to my mind is the first major element of mentoring is the inspirational part.
Excellent.
Now, the inspirational part to a large extent flows out of a leader on two dimensions. One is he is nothing but authenticity, the glory of authenticity is flowing out. It's nothing but the authenticity which flows out. And second thing is, it is the spontaneity and the sense of larger goodness. That Loka Sangraha, when the leader brings these values to the table, the process of mentoring implicitly has started in a very big way. I don't see, for example, Mauna Vyakya Prakatita Parabrahma Tattvam Yuvanam. What does it say? It says that the mentor-mentee sometimes does not even need any verbal exchange. It is your very presence radiates that authenticity and that inspirational element. Half the mentoring without even speaking a word has already happened. So I think that are much stronger forces which play out. In this particular case, of course, there is a very specific question. So there is a certain way the logic has flown. But, I think that's what it is. Look at, Taittiriya Upanishad, for example. Adihi Bhagavo Brahmeti, Tapasa Brahma Vijijñāsasva. But I believe the mentoring is a possibility by which one can make the mentee lot more comfortable with an open mind. The mind is open rather than answering, rather than even directing into X, Y, or Z. Tapasa Brahma Vijijñāsasva, Tapo Brahmeti is a very open proposition for the person. Many of our Upanishad passages are like that.
Right. Excellent. So, in other words, what I'm hearing from you is that mentor-mentee relationship is the foundation of how our Upanishads and our entire Vedanta and our basic spiritual literature is also built on the idea of a teacher and a taught. Sometimes the teacher becomes the taught and the vice versa, but the idea of creating a relationship in which inspiration flows through, whether it is Dakshinamurti and the various rishis, or in this case, Shankaracharya and a disciple, or a future disciple, maybe we should say, that comes out. And inspirational leadership, anything else? Can you think about what other aspects you might have had a not chance, but you want to elaborate?
I do talk about it in great detail elsewhere. So let me just add a couple of sentences. To me, inspirational leadership, the way I see inspirational leadership is there is a situation. This situation demands a certain response. And I am part of this situation. Given whatever capabilities that I have, I would spontaneously respond to that situation. I will put the best foot forward because I am part of that situation. Therefore, I will respond spontaneously because this situation requires a certain response. These are the elements that brings inspirational leadership out into the domain.
That's excellent. And I think you also, I suppose, if we were to have more time, you would have talked about the Trigunatmika Maya, the idea of the Sattvic, Rajasic, and Tamasic natures of people, and how a leader can inspire a Tamasic person is significantly different from a person who is Rajasic and Sattvic. It would be very interesting to hear a little bit about how would you touch upon Trigunatmika Maya in bringing the inspirational leadership?
The first and the most important understanding that I have had from this Trigunatmika construct is it militates against the current dominant thinking that all are equal, all are same.
Yeah.
The first construct it gives is all are unique. All are unique is different from all are same.
Right.
I am unique, and so you are.
Mm.
So the first understanding a leader must develop
Yeah.
is what is called each one is a unique piece. See, the biggest problem we have is we want to say everybody must be like we are creating a cookie cutter.
Yeah.
In some sense, we believe that excellence is possible when there is a cookie cutter. It started from Taylor's scientific management principle and has moved on and on. This cookie cutter business is not going to work. So Trigunatmika construct says people are very unique. So then that brings the second question. So what is the uniqueness about these three people? All that we need to go is just chapter 14 of Bhagavad Gita. Beautiful shlokas. It is like a nice research paper written, introducing the concept, how it happens, how can you identify it, how can you play around with it, and so on. So a leader, if he gets a good understanding of the three gunas, then he will be able to handle, he will be able to recognize a tamasic nature, a person who is tamasic, as well as a person who is rajasic and sattvic, and be able to align the work plan and what to expect of him in a way that it gets the best out of such a person. Because it's not possible to get a tamasic person to create a new head R&D development and come with a new generation of products. I think we will be wasting our time without this understanding. But we can use him for beautifully in some other way, he or she in a particular way.
Yeah, and also probably most of the people today require to have certain amount of security orientation, quality orientation, and they need to follow what we tell them to do, and they need to operate within a certain framework. All of these, you can look at it as the best qualities of a tamasic person. So without having a tamasic person, you can't deliver anything like especially the kind of medical help that people need. If everybody becomes creative, if everybody thinks whatever they want to do with a rajasic nature, it doesn't work. So we need tamasic there, right? And
you said it so well, absolutely. And if you don't have tamas, you will not get sleep. So you will be destroyed in a few days. So tamas is a very positive thing. We should not look at it as a negative thing. As you rightly said, it's a way by which we can handle these different, colors and shades of skills and capabilities that we have.
Right. And how do you deal with rajasic person differently? How does an inspirational leader work with the rajasic if we go by the philosophy that we have been talking about?
See, rajasic person is nothing but a great deal of energy. Rajasic person brings phenomenal energy to the table. Right. But then what is important for the leader to understand is that energy will be put to good use when that rajasic person is patted on his back, told you are great and you have the right kind of skill. See, they have a lot of manitva.
Yeah.
They are very concerned about their sort of recognition of their work and so on.
Approval.
There is nothing wrong. After all, I'm only saying you are doing a good job. But if you tell it to a tamasic person, it makes no sense to him. He doesn't even understand that. Whereas for a rajasic person, I think we can draw a huge amount of energy by patting him and feeding into his ahankara in a very positive way, because he is nothing but a bundle of energy, and he will bring it and he will do a loka sangraha if you are able to put him in the right perspective. I think that's what we learned from that.
That's it. Yeah, I agree. Even in Silicon Valley, many of the startups which are started in either Indian Silicon Valley, Bangalore, where you live, or the American Silicon Valley, there are lots of rajasic people who are becoming entrepreneurs because they have a bundle of energy, they have a big picture, they have a certain amount of ego that is associated with it. They think they know, and they are interested in trying out something outside the box. And there is a certain enough amount of self-confidence that they are willing to jump into something without having to worry about fear and control and some of it.
Absolutely.
And so they are great starters of entrepreneurial company, but when it comes to execution and delivery, a rajasic person becomes unreliable. So that is where if they can partner with tamasic, that's what I'm hearing. Is that correct?
No, sir. Actually, I think there is a very important element in the success of this startup. there is a
Please tell me.
there is a sattvic gem sitting at the back, and then providing that, see, a Rajasic person brings phenomenal energy. He can go to any extent and do. But then since he is driven by this passion and a little bit of ahankar and so on, you need somebody who, it's like when the child is trying to walk, when it falls, somebody has to catch and then put it into the right path. So you will notice some of the successful entrepreneurs have one sattvic or a two sattvic person who they are able to sort of have him. He can be a, you call it as a board of advisors. You can even call him as, whatever you may want to call it. I think a Rajasic person would certainly require a Tamasic person to execute, but a Rajasic person to sustain and grow need a Sattvic epicenter in the organization.
Yeah, mentor or a guide or somebody.
This person will beautifully think, as in Taittiriya Upanishad, there is a beautiful shloka. It says, Yukta ayukta aluksha dharmaka masihu yatate tatra. These people will be a good think tank. They have no axe to grind. God has endowed them with a good thinking. Use them. And they'll be happy to provide. That will make it the whole success.
Excellent.
I think I had a very good discussion on this Triguna, I think. Thanks to your very beautiful perspectives.
Thank you very much, Mahadevanji. Really, it's a pleasure to interact with you. Especially being in the field of leadership, it is wonderful to see more and more people like you taking up Advaita Vedanta and Vedanta to be brought into management. So all the blessed and what you call best to you, and much grace be showered on you. Thank you very much for enlightening us today.
Thank you, Prasadji. I must first of all thank Advaita Academy, because they have played, and Indic Academy, of course, they played a huge role in whatever small little thing I've been doing for the last 5-6 years. And also for this particular initiative, I think these are only time will tell what we are doing. I think I pray to Sarveshwara and Jaganmata that this Advaita Academy and Indic Academy grow in strength and more, so that we have more and more Loka Sangraha. I see the spirit is Loka Sangraha. I thank you for giving me this small little opportunity, like a squirrel, to bring one stone into this great, building of the Sanatana Dharma into the future. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. And you have a wonderful evening.